energy field research, electrocrystals, all sorts of inventions. He's dabbled in Kirlian photography, and basically, I think you're going to be intrigued by some of what we're going to hear about tonight. We're pushing the frontiers of science here, but we're really looking forward to this. So please give a big hand to Harry Oldfield.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to thank Andy and all the organisers, and also the high-tech guys in the front and behind the scenes there. Without them, I wouldn't be having a lecture tonight. They've rescued the hard disks and all the wonderful, magical things they do. I just want to say it is great being here with this evening in this wonderful, ancient and holy and mysterious town of Glastonbury. It's my first time. I think I am overdue at my age to visit here, but better late than never. And first thing I want to talk to you about is, first of all, to begin with a little apology to you all, sincerely. And it's this, because I'm going to try this evening to squeeze about 35 years of research into about, how long? An hour and a half. Thank you. I've only just found out how long I'll have. Okay. My students don't call me the nutty professor for nothing, and by the end of the presentation, you're all going to be in agreement, I'm sure. Okay. So we'll start a little bit at the beginning, just to give you some background on literature, just find out the laser's working here. My first work with another great, a wonderful researcher called Roger Coghill, The Dark Side of the Brain, and where we started to introduce Kirlian photography into this country for the first time, and my other invention, electrocrystal therapy. Kirlian photography was not my invention. It is not my invention. It came from the Ukraine, as it is now, and it was by Semyon and Valentin Kirlian. And I first got to know about them in a wonderful book called Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain by Ostrander and Schroeder. It was published by Abacus Books. I still believe it is available on the internet if you want to do any real background into how all this was sparked off. It's a book well worth reading. And that's above my own book here, by the way. Okay. Thank you. And another book that was a biography written of me and my work by Jonah Grant Solomon, Harry Oldfield's Invisible Universe. Out of print now, but still available on the internet, Amazons and all those other wonderful jungles where my book can be found. Okay. A few different articles in national newspapers and things over the years. But just to show you, I have been around a long time. And to prove it to you, I can tell you this story. 2006, I was in America, and they were giving me some kind of very nice, prestigious award, by the way, there. And I had got it, after my presentation, I had a young lady running after me down the corridor saying, Dr. Oldfield, can you hang up a minute? I just want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind. And I did. And she said, my mother wants to know, are you the Harry Oldfield or his son? And of course, I was feeling very flattered, you know, this young lady, teenager, you know. And I said, well, actually, you know, I am the Harry Oldfield, and my son is named Anthony, and he's sort of like 20-odd years old. And then she stopped me, and my bubble burst, and she said, it's just that my mother said, by now, you are so old, you're probably dead. And it's the son I was going to see. So I just wanted to prove to her, to my mother, that you're still alive. So, absolutely true. And some of my early research actually began before that date, but 1972, the Kirlian photography. Semyon and Valentin produced a beautiful method of making electrical pictures using corona discharge around living things and non-living things. And the wonderful thing about living things, ladies and gentlemen, is they gave off a wonderful, vibrant energy field. The inanimate object did not, unless it was like a coin or a cross that had been influenced with healing energy. And this was an artist, I call this the, for those old enough to remember the ad, the Ready Brek man. Okay, the wonderful golden glow. The artist's impression is very good, but I have to tell you, in reality, and this evening you'll be seeing the reality of it, the artist's impression is a shadow of what the living energy field around a human being and all other living things are in reality. This was one of the first Curlian pictures in colour I took of my thumb. No members of the local constabulary here, I hope. Good, good. I'm still incognito. Right, okay. And this is actually the corona discharge and the energy. There's no lens or focal plane in a Curlian camera. There's a moisture screen above the film, and there's an electronic plate, and an electromagnetic field is passed around it. I'll be showing you the setup for those of you I know in Glastonbury who dabble. I'll show you how to do it. And it's in my books, of course. Thank you. And here's the apparatus. We have here, ladies and gentlemen, inside there, a modified Tesla coil, which is a pulsed high-frequency coil. Here we have a DC power source, so that there is no fluctuations from mains frequency or interference coming down the wiring. And here in these early days, my design of a function generator that had pulse ranges of very below and beyond human frequency ranges of ears, but these were electromagnetic field pulses with different waveforms. And we sent this pulsed high frequency, high voltage into something like a leaf, which was earthed, and this is the plate, this is reflective dielectric covering, and that reflected all the light back to the film, which was underneath the object to be photographed. Of course, when people put their fingers and hands on it, they didn't need to be earthed, unless they liked wires attached to them, of course, and then we obliged, of course. That goes down rather well in America, where certain electrocution methods are still used for capital punishment. But it's wasted here. I'll remember that, not to do it again. And here, right, I know in Glastonbury you're interested in the paranormal and ghosts and phantoms. Because when I was an ordinary reductionist thinking young man in my early days of learning about science, we didn't entertain such things. But over the years, my mind has changed. And it began with looking at a leaf. Okay, can you see this leaf here? It's a Canadian maple leaf, but it's not all there. If you look very carefully, ladies and gentlemen, from here to there is no physical leaf. It's a phantom energy picture. Okay? And Roger and I came up with a term, long before string theory in physics, for a subatomic energetic matrix on which these physical molecules for everything around people, the universe, trees, stones, you name it, on which these physical molecules are strung. Okay? And it's this organizing field. Okay, morphogenic field resonance as well has been brought forward by people, various researchers and other things, of course, which I give due credit to. Thank you. Now, I wasn't satisfied with that partial phantom. What would happen if you took the whole leaf away? Well, I tried that and there was nothing left. So I left a central stem of vital force, okay, and ripped off all the leaves, which were there. That's the control, by the way, on the left, what it was like before I ripped off all the leaves. The leaves, the secret for a good phantom, 100%, is they have to be burned, okay? Just like in India, you know, the physical remnants of this space-time are burned, and therefore the energetic process is released and carries on instantly. The other thing to mention is the plant has to be, for this 100%, organically grown. If it's seeing chemical fertilization, any time in its growing life period, you will only get partial phantoms. So we discovered in the 1970s, before organic farming was popular. Here, by the way, I started to grow organic cabbages. And as there's farmers and growers here, this part of the country, I hope. At least with the apples and cider, at least, I hope. And one of the scourges of the organic gardener is the cabbage white caterpillar. Okay? Now, the reason why I'm maligning it, ladies and gentlemen, so much, is because of what I did a few seconds later. Please show the ghastly deed. A very painless injection of potassium cyanide, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a good point at this stage to announce that I also do children's parties and weddings, and Andy will be taking bookings after the presentation, or Martin down there. We'll see. And no, don't do this at home, ladies and gentlemen. I am an expert. Okay, as my dad used to say, an X is something that was, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. And so after this injection, you can see that the life force was put out. It was just like putting a hose on a bonfire. Light went out. There's fallout from the creature, but that creature, I assure you, is quite dead. And that's the before, just to remind you, and the after. And the reason why I put healthy there is because it had a last meal of my organic cabbages. And they were beautiful, just done with a knob of butter. They were gorgeous, you know. So he died very happy. I even put the butter on for him, you know. So, anyway, thank you. And here's some of that organic material, the organic cabbage. Okay, beautiful. It's not a galaxy in some thing taken from the Hubble telescope. It's taken in the early 1970s with this discovery. But you can do terrible things to an organic piece of material too, especially if you put it in a pressure cooker or stew it from hours and hours. How many of you of my generation remember school dinners? And you'd walk through the school gate and you could smell what you were going to be having for lunch, because they'd been cooking from about 7 o'clock in the morning. Don't overcook your vegetables, ladies and gentlemen, because it takes out the life force. And this vitality, we also proved, is transferred to a human subject or an animal subject who eats the organic material. These aren't some supernova suns in a distant galaxy. They are organic oranges with the energy field around them in Kirlian. Thank you. Here we have an organic clove of garlic, and it was so energetic, ladies and gentlemen, with this effervescence of energy. It was even sending out, well, I didn't know what they were in those days, but almost orb-like structures right across the photography plate, several centimeters. Now, I was approached when I was giving a presentation for Association for Health for the New Age by Marcus Corzens in the 1970s. Little did I know, in the audience, just like tonight, there could be researchers and things, there was a young researcher called Glenn Ryan, and he was from the local hospital. And he said to me, I'm doing research on cancer cells and on some cancer subjects. Instead of doing all this organic photography, would you like to take on a little research project with me on photographing people with cancer and also the cells growing in culture that I do? So without hesitation, you can imagine a biology teacher, as I was at that time, given the opportunity for this kind of frontline research. I, went and visited him at his laboratory, and we didn't finish the first session of work till 4 o'clock in the morning. My ex-wife wondered where I was. In fact, she probably still wonders where I am, but that's another story. Well, coming back to the picture, ladies and gentlemen, here, in a healthy person, this is fingertips, right? We've got lovely, organized packets of energy. Okay, my laser's failing a little bit. It can happen at my time of life. I'll switch lasers in a moment. And here, though, the cancer subject, there's chaos. There's more energy, but it's not in organized packets. It's the life force gone rampant, ladies and gentlemen. Because, cancer, obviously is associated with a very vigorous form of life, but it's not organized. It's like a rebellion that's gone wrong. Okay, next one. But we weren't satisfied with just that. We were able to get hold of biopsy material from, this case, malignant breast tumor, and isolate from the center of the tumor And the surgeons at the hospital also used to take what a safe surround in their excision of the cancer site. So there's normal cells as well. And Dr. Glenn Ryan checked under the microscope. This was normal tissue, exactly the same size, exactly the same thing. But the malignant tissue, right at the center of the tumor, was so effervescent, I could look at the top of it, and it was like looking down a miniature volcano as far as the energy was concerned of the cancer. When I looked down the tube of the normal cells, the normal tissue, they were quiet, doing the thing they all do, is just living their own normal life force and working away in the background. The cancer once was so exuberant, it escaped the thick rim of the test tube there, the energy. And this is a theory worked out, Glenn and myself, of how sometimes cancer can transmit from cell to cell or tissue to tissue. It's called, actually, an old theory, mitogenic radiation, if you ever want to look that up on the internet. Thank you. We also got whole tumors, ladies and gentlemen, and these are called TS sections, cross sections, okay? And this is a benign tumor, okay? And it had an outside layer that was alive, that grew, but the center part had necrotized. That means it had died off in the center, and it gave off an energy field that was quite vigorous. But one thing about the tumor, this tumor, if it broke off, bits of it, and circulated in the bloodstream, it wouldn't seed, it would not grow anymore anywhere else. If it carried on growing in someone's brain or in their liver or something, it could still kill you. Benign doesn't mean good in this case. But here, with this malignancy, it was a very strong-going malignant carcinoma, and bits of this could break off, and you can see it's alive with energy all the way through. There's no black area or dead area. And some of these particular tumors and cells like very low, high CO2 contents, tension, and very low oxygen. And this is why in some natural cancer therapies they encourage the movement of oxygen and hyperoxygenated things through the body, especially the GI tract. These I would like to thank my workers in America who supplied me. Dr. Thelma Moss, in particular, did this study in the late 1970s with rats. Okay, and here there was only the rats were photographed, but here we had rats that had cancer in their bodies, not in their tails, but in their bodies, and here we had a healthy rat. And sometimes you could screen to see if any rats. You could mix them up, and you would always pick out the rats that had any cancer growing in their bodies, just as we saw with the human fingertips. So Glenn and I, Dr. Ryan and I, were thinking marvelous things that we wanted to make this into a kind of a mass screening thing, coding photography for cancer. This is going back in the 1970s. That particular project, I won't say by what and by who, was quashed because, and the excuse was the ethical committee, it was not drug-based, therefore it was unethical. The ethics are still the same today, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. So I was pretty dismayed by this, and I'd left teaching by then, and I was working as much as I could in the hospital with the research work. And after, viewing my views, I was frog-marched out the door one day of this hospital by security. And probably the best thing they ever did to me, throwing out the hospital, because I'd just be a glorified technician there now if they kept me. And I went on to say, I think I can do something better. And the reason I will tell you that is it's very pretentious of me to say that at the time, because I'd watched the healing hands action on cancer cells of a wonderful healer. His name was Matthew Manning. Matthew Manning, back in the 1970s. And what he did was not kill the cancer cells growing in culture. There was no animals involved, just cells growing. He stopped them from dividing by inhibiting certain enzymes that were very important for the mitosis, the division of the cells. And he stopped it dead. Didn't kill the cancer cells, because he said to Glenn, he said, if I've got an energy that could kill cancer cells, someone or any healer could have an energy that could kill normal cells, and we can't do that. And in another way, I was able to get healing energy from the crystals was vibrating them. in an electromagnetic field and putting mics around to see if they were giving off any audible sounds. And I believe this is, here we are. I call this track unofficially my whale songs, because this is what it reminds me of. And this particular track has a wonderful, tranquil, peaceful aids meditation, restful sleep, and has even been known to put screaming babies to sleep. Although I can't guarantee that for all the mums and dads out there. There are also other tracks on there that are very invigorating and balancing for the chakras. And people say, well, how do you control the power of this, this device? I said, simple, your volume control on your hi-fi or your MP3, I once got a very interesting call from Germany, and the lady said, oh, Herr Oldfield, your CD is wonderful. I said, well, thank you very much, meine Dame. I said, how do you use it? She said, well, it is wonderful. My family hate music, but I played it in the house just to annoy them really loud. And the house ghost, the poltergeist we had in the house, has now vanished, has gone. What do you think of this, mein Heilpraktiker, Harry? And I said, well, obviously, the ghost has no taste in good music. And she hung up on me. I don't think she quite understood that it was a joke. And show you the effects on people, and I had a lovely model here at this time, and still do, my wonderful partner, and she's also managing director of my company, and she gets me to places on time, and this is across the world I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen, because I can sometimes be on another planet with all the stuff I do. I think you've already guessed that, haven't you? But here, this is what she was like, losing energy from the side of her face before the crystals, and after listening to that was what happened to the auric field afterwards. And later, when we got back from the United States, the British dentist diagnosed a deep-seated abscess, which the crystals kept in control before she got it seen to. In fact, when he looked inside, I don't think there was much left, was there, Eddie? No. So that was rather good. So that's the before and the after. Of course, all I'm promoting with the CD is good sounds and good music, not claiming anything else. It's wonderful that I still get a Christmas card from the sole member of my fan club. You have to listen carefully. Yes, you do. Okay. Now, speaking of sound and healing, this is the seismograph PIP monitored research we did together with John Reed and his wonderful instrument, the seismograph. And here is our crystal sounds and the beautiful shapes and patterns they make as the crystal sounds were playing that you heard earlier. And this is the screen we were monitoring, and these are all the shapes. And these patterns, ladies and gentlemen, mean something. And when the pitch was changed, we got rotational things. And there were also patterns, there's not a lot of time to show you tonight, but there's also patterns that look like mandalas and things. Incredible. In fact, this is one actually. I'm glad we included it. And if you look at some of the Tibetan and Indian mandalas, they are very similar. And they are impressions of standing waves of energy, standing waves of sound, electromagnetism, standing waves. Thank you, Evan. Thank you. Now, this is PIP. This is the material, the invention that I made for observing wonderful patients like my dog, Venus, in America. And I went back to 1987 when I first was able to make my first PIP picture. I remember it was in my garden shed with an old computer called the Acorn Archimedes, which was the first 32-bit RISC computer. I still have it somewhere. I'm in love with that computer. It stopped working ages ago. No one will repair it. Just putting it out there for anybody. But yeah, never left the garden shed for 24 hours, peed in the garden, and things like that. Oh, probably that's too much information for the ladies. I sometimes forget where I am, you know. But anyway, here is Pip. Not P, but Pip. Thank you. No, it's not. It's just to remind you, forgetting my own presentation, just to remind you what the phantom leaf looked like, okay? Now, transfer that to a human being, okay? I believe, from what I've been able to observe and research over the years, and I'm being serious now, that man and woman are more than their physical parts. They are a mental, psychic creature, but also spiritual. And this is all integrated in us and balanced. And there are different layers and clothing of energy, okay? And here we had a volunteer of a young man who lost his arm in an automobile accident. But he said, sometimes, Harry, you know, I can feel my fingers moving. I know if an object goes through. My wife has blindfolded me and has tickled my invisible hand and fingers with a feather, and I've detected it. I said, when you're feeling like you want to be tickled again, come and see me. I said, I'll tickle you with something called PIP, polycontrast interference photography, and we'll see your invisible arm, I hope. I've done it with leaves, you know. And he looked at me most peculiarly. Have you indeed? We'll see. So he turned up a bit skeptical, and I said, can you feel your arm and hand now? He said, yes. Then I took the picture. There's the side view profile of his body, back and front. There's the stump, okay, the end of his physical arm. Here is the energy field right down to a missing thumb. Knuckles, and there's the shape of the hand, etc. And you can even see the tailoring of a wrist. Fantastic. We have repeated these experiments as well on other volunteers. Fingers and toes, and here we go. Yes, indeed. Now, the astonishing look here on this Qigong master, you heard the term eye-popping. It's because for the first time in his own body, we are showing him the chakras and meridian flows that he was taught as a young boy by his master in China, mainland China. And this is what he was looking at. Here are the classic meridian flows that flow down the arms. Okay, the chakras are here, throat chakra, heart chakra, and here is the solar plexus. And it was absolutely wonderful. I believe, hold visiting professor of medicine status in mainland China still at a few Chinese hospitals because I went to China and trained these barefoot doctors. They do wear shoes, by the way. I was most disappointed in that. But what they do is they go back to their communities once they've been trained in medicine to work for their local communities, their local villages, their local townships. And I was privileged, really privileged, all these young enthusiastic faces to teach them how to use this diagnostic system in the field. Thank you. And another thing it can do here is also pick up not almost perfect fields like the Qigong master, but the diseased energy fields of people like with angina pectoris, where the heart chakra is completely blocked, and it's put a ring around the heart of negative energy, for example. I teach the system of diagnosis of this energy all over the world, by the way. So it's something that is repeatable with other researchers. And here we have a young lady in perfectly good health, lovely strong meridians there going down her forearm. But if somebody should get, like this case, this is not swine flu, but influenza virus, all those meridians are disrupted. I did try ringing the NHS helpline when I got a sniffle the other day. All I got was crackling on the line. Okay. Yes, I know, that was a real swine, wasn't it? I do apologise. And making a real pig of myself here. And here we have the early stage, before I show you anything negative, I always like to lighten things a bit, of a benign breast tumour. And we saw this ring of energy. For the young men in the audience, I should explain that this is a brassiere strap, okay, to orientate you around the picture. And there is the top of the breast. Here we have an energy field. And I recognized this before. I'd seen it in the hospitals a few times. And I told the young lady that she should be tested out by seeing her practitioner and get a referral to hospital, maybe for a mammogram. And she went to a practitioner, GP, and he told her, sorry, I can't palpitate it. I cannot find or feel anything. You're a completely healthy young woman. And she went back, and we still saw it growing, okay, the energy field disturbance. And I told her to go back again. And she made such a nuisance, so she gave her the mammogram. And it was found just a few millimeters across a benign tumor growing. And it's one of the smallest they'd ever detected at this particular hospital. But we had detected it a good over 2 or 3 centimeters across of the disturbed energy field effect. Anything physical in the body or this universe happens in energy first. Nothing can happen without energy transfer. Quantum physics, when you listen to my friend and colleague, Dr. Manjir Samantha Lawton, tomorrow, I hope some of you will be at a lecture, Punk Science. Yes, I love it. I reviewed her book, and I love the title to that. And it definitely goes with my personality. And you will see how much energy affects us in our environment on a day-to-day level, including little mini black holes around us, coming and going. Okay. Now, here we've got normal female energy. Okay, this is the solar plexus chakra. There's the splenic chakra there, there's the navel. And these are meridians going through the liver, gallbladder meridian, etc. But things can change, because 8 months later, there's a secondary energy presence there, which I hope you can all see around. Head, arm or leg, nice knee there, or elbow. Could have been a footballer because of all the kicking. It later proved to be wrong. It wasn't a male footballer. As I predicted, it was a female. And here we have part of the placenta or another appendage. As you can see, at this stage, the head wasn't in the engaged position for delivery, but a couple of weeks later, the head did engage and she was turned the right way for delivery. And shall I show you what was causing this energy field? We'd like to see that? Yes? Yes? Good? Okay. Okay, babe, show me. Oh, I mean, there we are. Isn't that gorgeous, okay? I remember my good old friend Lama Rinpoche, and he had a beautiful energy field around him, and I was photographing him left, right, and centre. He said, enough of me, enough of me. Stop it, Harry. I said, well, can you think of anything more balanced I could photograph? He said, certainly. He said, it'll take the pressure off me, boy. He said, go and photograph a newborn baby, and you will see, as long as it hasn't been screamed and shouted at or got into bad habits already of this world, you will see beautiful, perfect chakras and energy flows in and around her. For the mobile, thank you for switching off your mobile phones this evening, ladies and gentlemen. You probably switched them off a little bit more when you see what's happened to this young man who was complaining of one-sided migraine-type headaches. Constantly, their young man with his phone almost like surgically cleaved to his face. And here is producing, this is the normal energy from the brain, but here, the auditory centers here, right side, is producing this mucky, brown, treacly stuff. And just to show you, it was affecting here, the back of the brain as well, where he was getting a lot of symptoms, including his eyesight sometimes getting blurred. And that is the normal side of the brain, where the telephone wasn't. So we can pick up the effects of almost any negative or positive force on the human energy field as and when it happens in real time. Thank you. This is a frightening picture, really, I have to tell you, for those almost demonic eyes of a crack cocaine addict. And those of you with discerning vision for pattern recognition will already see that there's half a face there with an eye, and another figure, very sinister-looking figure here, and smaller shapes around. She was the only one there against the backdrop. She was not there. Her parents were outside when I took that picture. No one could have stood there next to her. And I said, you know, she said, well, I hear voices, they tell me to do antisocial things, they've told me to steal and murder my parents. And I won't go into it, but we tried to help her with the energy field input from the crystals. Thank you, Evie. Now here is the same girl, but this, I often associate crack cocaine where the brow chakra was completely open, the crown chakra was split in half, with also excessive kundalini stimulation. A lot of these young people can become hypersexual and not discerning. And here, at the back of the hips here, these are her slacks and these are the bottom of her legs, things. We got this circle of negative kundalini energy, which was a negative vortex, and attaching themselves to this energy, which is really, can be used for food, with other creatures that don't live quite in our realms, shall we say, and that's a conservative observation, sucking in on these energy forces. Now, of course, no one before, except clairvoyance, mystics of vision, perhaps for 1,000 years ago here in Glastonbury, and today, this tradition has been kept alive for this mystical observation of people, things, and sacred sites, which I will be going on to. Oh, this is the beautiful energy of my friend Rinpoche, and the only thing that beats it, he said, would be a newborn baby, which you've already seen. But that's all the rainbow colours around such a wonderful person. He never wanted to sustain negative thoughts internally or have them externally focused on any part of him or his environment. So, there we go. I'm giving up modelling now, so after that. So. Anyway, here we have another invention of mine called the Oldfield microscope, which goes back to 1997. And it's a way of, when we look at a microscope of any living thing, okay, it's a very uncoloured thing, especially with germs, bacteria, protozoa, etc. They lack colour. If they are plants, they have green chlorophyll in chloroplasts and granules, but that's the only colour you usually see. Now, when you want to look at any tissue under the microscope in a pathology sense, it has to be killed, stained, and fixed. Okay, killed, fixed, stained, dehydrated, rehydrated, and all going through lots of complicated things. And I looked at this method and thinking of tissues and cells, etc., and I thought, there's got to be a better way of doing this. I looked at dark field, phase contrast, and I think, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And I decided we'd do it with light. We stained anything under the microscope with light. This is the result. This is my special apparatus that goes underneath the microscope. And we move around and select what we want. And here we have a very good normal rendering of a water flea. Okay, it's not really a flea, it's a relative of shrimps, Gammarus pulex in our rivers and streams. This is Daphnia, and lobsters and things like that live in the sea. But that's the same flea stained with apparatus, still alive and well. And later on you'll see that flea's heart beating in real time and the cells around it. People think, oh, obviously an electron microscope is better because it shows much bigger images. But I'm sorry, you can't look at living things with an electron microscope because, first of all, they're in a vacuum and coated with various layers of molecular metals to withstand the electronic bombardment that happens in the vacuum to bring the electrons to focus on a phosphorus screen. But here, the animal stays alive and well. That microscope has gone around the world in researchers' hands, and I was nominated for fellowship to the Royal Microscopy Society some years ago because of this. There's the heart, everybody. And it has only two chambers with a deviated sort of septum through the middle there. 2 chambers, unlike our 4 chambers in our hearts. Look at the individual cellular components you can see around there. Muscles and cells of other tissues. In real time, we're not hurting the creature at all. We're just illuminating it with our special apparatus. And for the, I know it's not today, but for the hay fever sufferers amongst you, sometimes people like, with microscopy, to identify the pollen grains individually. This is what an ordinary microscope sees without chemical staining. But here, with my light staining, instantly, on this glycerin preparation, you can see the pollen grains and the shape and the patterns to identify the species. That picture should really get up your nose. And here, okay, not on the wings of a dove, but the wings of a wasp, we have what an ordinary microscope sees here, of this one specimen, and then after I have put it through my apparatus. Thank you, Evie. And that's top and bottom. And it's so good, you can actually discern a 3-dimensional rendering of the surface. Down at high magnifications and looking at the hairs, we discovered that the hairs on winged insects, okay, are spiral. And I thought, what on earth could this be for? And then I found out from a gentleman who was Callum Coates, who was in Australia at the time, an expert on vortex energy and Scherberger's work, etc. It's all written in beautiful Nexus magazines out there at the back, later in the back of the auditorium. And that if air is passing over a spiral, it creates micro-vortices, which creates uplift, okay, on the top of the wing. They're not under the wing, but top of the wing. So they can fly through, turbulent air and all sorts of things that planes can't do, even helicopters, comfortably. And so if you ever see in the future, coming out of British Aerospace or somewhere like that, a furry wing, you know they took my idea. Okay. They made dinosaurs furry, haven't they? You noticed? Or feathery, anyway, feathery. Now here, we have a beautiful creature called a slime mold. I am very, very fond of this life form, ladies and gentlemen. I've called her Matilda because she's always working down under, in honor of my Australian friends. And the beautiful thing, can you see these little circles on the agar plate here? She's moving towards. And where she touches, she envelops these little circles. And those are Escherichia coli, bacteria-growing colonies in an agar dish. She has the most wonderful appetite for all pathogenic bacteria that I've been able to put down here. And she's like a huge, giant amoeba that you can see with your eyes. She is magnified here, macro photography. And she has a bloodstream that doesn't conduct any blood, it conducts cytoplasm. She has DNA material, all evenly distributed through her whole body, her slime body. And you can break off bits of her, and each one of those little bits will grow into a bigger slime mold. Yes, indeed. I just want you to know that all my exes remind me that of being so slimy. I have now actually proved it to these females now after all these years. My complete interest in these slime molds. There we are. Yes, indeed. I was once nearly arrested, ladies and gentlemen, and I was fishing down my road, down a manhole cover with a test tube on the end of my fishing line, my fishing stool, and I was after human effluent fluid. I know my father always said I would end up if I didn't work in a job like that. Quite right, madam, you say. But in this wonderful, wonderful fluid is a richness of something called phages. Now, phages are viruses that actually predate on bacteria. Funny to think that, you know, bacteria actually have their own viruses. And I was after these phages to show them in my microscope, working on killing bacteria. By the way, Matilda, I'm impregnating into a bandage to where eventually one day when it gets approved by some medical authority, long probably after I'm dead, that will go for MSA and gangrenous gas-producing bacteria and gangrene bacteria, etc. And as you can see here, the slime mold has got rid of it. Everything. Okay. Oh, yes, almost arrested. Thank you, Evie. I was almost arrested. I was just fishing away merrily, as you do. Fishermen amongst you, I'm sure, will be sympathetic with this story. And suddenly, it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't expecting this. A panda car, just in my own street, just pull up beside me, and 2 young men, they look like schoolboys, shows you my age, got out the car. And said, hello, sir, what are you doing? I explained to them, I'm a fellow of the Royal Microscopical Society. I'm here at the end of the tube here, and I'm trying to get a good sample of rich human effluent, and I'm going to spin it down in a centrifuge, isolate the phages. I'm then going to inoculate my bacteria plates and look for plaques, empty spaces of where those phages have eaten those bacteria. And I hope it's going to be some use in some time for treatment for humanity. The Russians are already doing it, you know. We don't want to get there before the Russians do it, gentlemen. And they look quite startled. It's quite sad to see big burly policemen looking scared. And the senior one turned to the youngster and said, are you going to write this up? And they silently got back into the car and drove off. But before they did, the senior officer rolled down the window and said, excuse me, sir, will you make sure you do put the cover back, as it could be dangerous to people walking on the pavement in the morning. And they drove off like the clappers. And here, my microscope can also view live blood, okay? Not dead blood, but live blood. This was published in this paper of my own manufacture up here. Okay, live blood analysis. And the beautiful thing about this is that we've got our own amoebas in our body. Okay, they're part of our lymphocyte and leukocyte and all our white cells and T cells. And they move around the body like amoebas, scavenging on, there's 2 here, 1 down here, 1 down here, 1 down here. This is live footage of them scavenging through this blood sample, looking for any parasites or invaders. Here it is, showing you that it is alive and working. That person had a very good immune system. And here is sorry to go on about this, but another invention of mine, which is a microscope that doesn't use lenses, okay? It's a projection microscope that's only using a special laser. And if you look very carefully, there's no lenses involved at all. I'm just putting it through the specimen at special angles and special refractive indexes. You'll see these germs, which are by 6 foot by 6 foot, as big as this screen, moving across the plane. There we are. It's a very small bacteria. Don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, I won't be bugging you for much longer on this subject. Going on to other subjects. Okay, Evie, thank you. Yes, I think a very, very appropriate title for Glastonbury is paranormal photography, using another invention of mine called the Oldfield filter. And do we have the device? Yep. And all you have to do, this is the Oldfield filter, ladies and gentlemen, to try and see if you can get anything similar to what I'm going to be showing you in a few minutes. And you have your digital camera or ordinary camera, and you put it, this is Evie's camera, so I've got to find a, oh, thank you. My technical assistant, as always. Yeah. She even helps me put on my seatbelt in a plane, because sometimes I'm a nervous flyer. I want that fur on the wings sooner rather than later of any aircraft. And I hate turbulent air. And I can't show you, but basically you'll be seeing things made with this filter by just simply putting it in front of a camera lens and doing an appropriate snap. without flash, by the way. Okay. And you can record some very interesting phenomena. Right, the phantom leaf effect, which you remember before. I think we'll move on. So we're taking it further to where if you remove the whole human being, is what I'm trying to say, you will get something left behind, an energy remnant. Even if that physical body is completely destroyed, there is something left behind. And he looked at me most strangely. He said, well, I'm glad, Governor, that something woke you up, because if there hadn't, you would have woken up certainly dead in the morning. And I'm telling this story in America. This is getting to the crescendo here. I'm telling this story in America to the Americans. And they like a good story there, by the way. You know, look at their last president, you know. Got to have my little dig around the bush, you understand. Beat around the bush. And here, someone's taking, with their camera and a filter, a picture of me on the rostrum, as some people have done this evening. Thank you very much. The gentleman over there with his camera, I think. Thank you. And you never know what may come out on it, because here was the most enormous orb. And if you look very carefully in there, I'm going to show you ears, nose, little mouth, and even whiskers. And I've looked at that most carefully under magnification, and that is the frontal face of my deceased cat, Barbie. So she appeared in this enormous orb to say, Dad, I'm still around, you know. And one thing I've learned over the years, as I get older, it's comforting. You can't bury love in a box. It's eternal, ladies and gentlemen. I think I can be forgiven for saying that in this wonderful holy town of yours, and spiritual town, and this spiritual company, that love is eternal. And if one thing that you want to, don't worry about bank accounts and pensions and things like that. Store up your category of love, not just with people, but with every living thing that you can touch and it can relate to you. I've even had microscopic life, like my slime mold, Matilda, change direction because I wanted her to move over into a particular gradient of the side. Well, I wanted to take a particular measurement of a pseudopodium. That means a false foot, by the way, to non-initiated. Indeed. Okay. Bosnian pyramids with flying saucers going in and out of the shot. And next is Pyramid of the Sun. Research. Oh, yeah. I seem to attract the attention of UFO flying vehicles whenever I'm doing a lot of this work. And they're flying in the sky there during this video. I hope they're learning a lot anyway. There they are. There's it's completely blue sky. Nothing there to be seen, but what my PIP system does is able to see phase changes in light, and things that are cloaked and invisible can become visible. Okay, thank you, Evie. Stonehenge. How many people here, hands up, have been to that wonderful site, Stonehenge? Oh, nearly the whole blooming audience. Excellent. Would you agree, like you are now, that what you're looking at, to look at the person next to you, do you think they're solid? Do you think they're real? Okay, look at these stones. Alpha photo. You can see straight behind them. Read, if you can get translations of Tacitus, one of the recordists of the Romans invading the British Isles for Julius Caesar. They were scared to death of the Druids with good reason. Because these places and the Druids who knew about the legends and could wield the energy of these places could devastate the Romans on psychic and spiritual fronts because of what they were doing. That's why they were chased all the way to Anglesey to be exterminated. By the way, this is not fiction. You can read it in the history books. And the recordings of Tacitus said that they observed, Roman soldiers observed Druids walking through solid stones. Walking through stones, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I didn't believe that fairy story, I thought, until I saw this. Thank you. Here we have a vortex of energies that we photographed over the standing stones at Stonehenge. And, by the way, the sun's not up there. These beams of light were somehow forming a pyramid of energy. The sun is way over here. It's morning. That's the noonday position. Those are not beams of light from the sun. They're from somewhere else, invisible. Then I switched to a different filter, and then I saw the pyramid. Here we are. and it transects and goes into the stones. Anyone doing research at Stonehenge, especially connected with Druid tradition, I hope they'll find this useful. And I will share certain pictures with them to prove any spiritual points they may have. And here we have vortices coming between stones, going up. And here we have this configuration, like an early physics cyclotron, like a collider. But they knew about vortex and colliding energy long before the physicists of our modern day era. Keep you entertained for the very long evening. I really do appreciate your great patience in my wonderful investigation into my and your invisible universe. Thank you.
Harry Oldfield, thank you very much indeed.